Are you a fan of peppering your article with adjectives and adverbs?
The creaking tower was leaning right when the churning, coursing wind came down over the snow-capped mountainside. John tried to walk hesitantly across the turbulent floor, but he could see how instantly difficult that was.
Such a mouthful, right? In this text, we see a lot of adjectives and a few adverbs. But let's give it a thought. Can our text stand out without adjectives and adverbs? In this video, we're diving into the age-old debate about the use of adjectives and adverbs. You might be surprised by what we are about to uncover. At the tail end of this video, I am going to share with you 5 important tips. But before we start, let's be clear. I am not against modifiers. I'm talking about adverbs and adjectives. I use them myself. In fact, it would be quite a challenge to write without them. Mark Twain once famously said, "When you catch an adjective, kill it." And Stephen King warned that the road to hell is paved with adverbs. Strong words, right?
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
For decades, the journalism world has embraced this idea that adjectives and adverbs are more trouble than they are worth. They clutter up your stories and can often be omitted. Less is more when it comes to these descriptive words. So the first rule here is this: you do not usually need adjectives and adverbs because your sentences will be better if you cut them out.
But hey Louis, you are not practicing what you preach. You just use usually, which is an adverb, and a better, an adjective.
Well, let me defend myself in Plaza Miranda. If I were to follow the strict rule, I'd have to cut them out. However, that would mess up my point because occasionally you do need them. And removing better from the second sentence? Well, that just doesn't work at all. So it turns out that you cannot completely banish adjectives and adverbs from your writing. But the key is to keep them in check. It is in this reasoning that Mark Twain himself adjusted his advice over time. He said, "I don't mean utterly, but kill most of them. Then the rest will be valuable. They weaken when they are close together. They give strength when they are wide apart." Second thing we need to keep in mind is brevity. Use fewer words whenever you can. Apply this universal rule, but pay special attention to adjectives and adverbs. Sorry this came late, but here's a definition of what we are talking about. Adjectives and adverbs are words that modify. Adjectives change the meaning of nouns. Adverbs change the meaning of verbs, phrases, clauses, or sentences. So how do you apply brevity? You should always test whether the modification is necessary. Here are a few examples of commonly used but unnecessary modifiers where the first word can always be cut. Completely untrue, strictly unnecessary. Broad daylight, considerable difficulty, firm decision, together with, along with, grateful thanks, high-speed car chase. Mark Twain was also down on adverbs. He said that they were the tool of the lazy writer. In their most common form, they end in ly and are attached to verbs. Here are some sentences which would be better without their adverbs. She tiptoed silently into the room. He glared aggressively at the traffic warden. She knew perfectly well he was lying. He completely rejected the allegation. In all these cases, the adverb states the obvious. The verb does the job without needing modification. The rule of thumb is always try to let the verb stand alone. And if it needs strengthening with an adverb, it is the wrong choice of verb. We can think of writers as carpenters picking their wood or tailors choosing the perfect cloth. We're all craftsmen and our success hinges on using the right tools. And for us, it's words. That is why it's important to be picky with adjectives and adverbs. It's a pro move, that will set you apart. And now, you may be wondering how to avoid overusing them. Let's take a look at an example. The tower creaked as the wind burst out of nowhere. John gripped the edges of the window as he scoured the ground. The floor tilted, and a cask smacked his ankle. Notice how you get a good feel of the situation, yet there are no direct adverbs or adjectives. Now, let's compare it to something I might have written when I was a new writer. The creaking tower was leaning right when the churning, coursing wind came down over the snow-capped mountainside. John tried to walk hesitantly across the turbulent floor, but he could see how instantly difficult that was. He placed his hands determinedly on the edges of the cloudy dirt-ridden window as he desperately looked across the muddy ground. Suddenly, the floor tilted abruptly, and a small wooden barrel quickly hit his vulnerable ankle.
Boring.
Quite cringe-worthy, isn't it? Reading that, it's almost like the author is shouting, "Hey, look how dramatic this is!" instead of letting the reader naturally immerse themselves in the scene and form their own opinion. So that's my case. So here are my top tips on how to get rid of adjectives and adverbs. But before that, consider smashing the like button and subscribe to my channel. That would mean a lot. Thank you guys. Now, the first tip is to choose strong verbs. Instead of relying on adverbs to modify weak verbs, use strong action verbs that convey the desired meaning on their own. For example, replace walk slowly with crept. Let's have some more examples. The flower smelled sweetly in the garden. When you can write it as, the flower exuded a sweet fragrance in the garden. Another example, she spoke softly so as not to disturb the others. Would it be better if you write it as, she whispered, careful not to disrupt the others? Next, the presentation went well because she spoke confidently. The presentation excelled because she spoke with confidence. These examples showcase how strong verbs can be applied in various sentences, from narrative and descriptive to dialogue, instruction, and opinion, enhancing the overall impact of your writing. The second tip is to use precise nouns. We need to employ specific nouns to paint a clearer picture. Instead of relying on adjectives to describe a generic noun, use a more precise noun. For instance, use sports car instead of fast car. The children played with a small dog, when you can write it as, the children played with a chihuahua. He handed me a hot drink. Would it be nice if you write it as, he handed me a steaming cup of coffee. The chef cooked an amazing meal. The chef prepared a gourmet feast. In each of these examples, a more specific and precise noun is used to replace a generic noun with adjectives, resulting in a clearer and more vivid description. Next, and this is the most important, show, don't tell. Instead of telling the reader how something feels or looks with adjectives and adverbs, use descriptive language and sensory details to show the reader what you want them to experience. This allows readers to form their own impressions. Example of tell. She was very sad. When you can write it, a show. Tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice trembled as she spoke about her loss. Example 2. He was a confident leader. Would it be nice if you'll write it as, he strode to the front of the room, his shoulders squared, and began speaking without a hint of hesitation, thereby commanding everyone's attention. In these examples, show don't tell is achieved without adjectives and adverbs, using descriptive language and sensory details to create a vivid, immersive experience for the reader. This is also very important. Prioritize editing. After writing your first draft, review your article with a critical eye to identify and remove unnecessary adjectives and adverbs. Ask yourself if each modifier is essential or if it can be replaced with more descriptive nouns and verbs. And lastly, context matters. Consider the context and purpose of each adjective or adverb, because sometimes they are necessary for clarity or to emphasize a particular point. Use them sparingly when they add value to your writing. Folks, let's remember what Mark Twain said about adjectives and adverbs. I don't mean utterly, but kill most of them. Then the rest will be valuable. They weaken when they are close together, but they give strength when they are wide apart. And that's a wrap on our exploration of the age-old debate about adjectives and adverbs. It's clear that while these modifiers have their place in writing, overuse can dilute the impact of your words. Remember, just like in cooking, where a pinch of spice can enhance a dish, but a heavy hand can overpower it. In writing, the art lies in finding the right balance. Use strong verbs, precise nouns, and the power of showing, not telling, to let your writing shine. So, when you're working on your next piece, think of yourself as a craftsman choosing the finest materials and keep those adjectives and adverbs in check. And before we go, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more writing tips and tricks. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.